Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Quick question for you, because I was just speaking with someone who actually talks about what makes a good podcast host. Her name is Elaine Grant, and she has a podcast called Sound Judgment, and I actually highly recommend that you listen to it because it's really an interesting, deep study into what makes a really good podcast host. So I'm wondering if there is something in not necessarily just the people that you work with, but you know, also the people you work with, if there's some undeniable quality about them that you think is sort of something that you see in the really good podcast hosts that you've worked with or that you've heard. Is there one underlying thing that you think makes them really good at what they do?
Yeah, I think that when they're thinking about the audience and not themselves, everything you're doing is for someone else. And everyone's time is valuable. So there are a lot of podcasters out there that have a podcast, but you have to wade through to get to the good stuff. And then there are other people that have made it really succinct so that you go, wow, that hour is over? I cannot believe it. I learned so much in that hour. And then other ones you go like, I listened for an hour. I started doing the dishes. I did other stuff. I heard one thing. So that it's just keeping the audience as your number one reason for being there. That's really what it's all about. And when it's about you, and it becomes narcissistic or whatever, then it's not, people are going to feel that, and it doesn't work, because where is the connection? So I just, and going back to that one word of defining what it is, so I set up my podcast a need for not only for understanding, for integration, like integrating it into your performance, not just learning it book smart, but putting it in your body. Because at first I thought, if your voice really is an instrument, why just make it a 3-piece band? Why not make it a whole orchestra with so much going on, which means how you move, how you feel, how you connect with someone rather than just the voice. And when someone has found a great structure, like you found a great structure, so I have to compliment you. And
Thank you.
And I'm so proud of you, because we worked together 25 years ago. I don't know, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I'm just so proud of everything you've done. You've just gone to the moon. You already were so talented then, and just look where you are now. So it's, but knowing that you're doing it for a good reason. And I think, and awareness, is for knowledge. So I think that when people can get that one word that hits them in the heart and in the gut, that's what makes a good podcaster. When it's just information, it's information. And that's when we often think, well, I'll just read the blog. I'll go get a book on that. I'll look that up. I'll just do a Google search and find it. But if someone is adding something to it that we haven't thought about, and it puts a feeling to it and a story, and it makes us come alive, that's what makes a good podcast host. And it's organization. My goodness. A lot of organization.
Goodness, yes. Just having a podcast in general is organization. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to say before, it probably takes about a week for us to put one of these together. And I'm not the one who does the editing. I'm not the one who does the show notes. I focus on what we're doing here right now.
Right.
And I love that. That's the fun part. But part of what makes you probably a very good teacher and very good at what you do is the passion that comes through in what you're saying. So when you share that passion, I would think that would be part of what makes a good podcast host as well, because you have a passion for what you're talking about. And so when you are feeling that, your audience, the people listening to you, feel that too. And I think that's a really good thing. So,
yeah, you have to care about your subject matter.
Definitely.
And when you are, let's say that you're doing something on history and you research something and you found this amazing bit of history that keeps unfolding, and then it makes it in this riveting style that you can't wait until the next episode. That's also, that's rare. I mean, that's why we're in the golden age of television, the new golden age, with so many great shows that are out there and all sorts of streaming devices and all these other things, that because people are anxious to tell a story, and people really want to hear more of a story and have someone emotionally connected with it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I think audio is part of that golden age as well. Oddly, I think we're kind of taking a step back in a lot of ways. Not that I don't think video is important, it is not important, because it is very important. But at the same time, we have so many ways to hear what's going on in our world, to hear those stories, to be let into someone else's theater of the mind, that right. I love what's going on now with podcasts, with audio dramas, with all of the stuff that's out there right now that is audio centric. That, I mean, that's another reason why I started this podcast in the first place, because audio centric, you and I both live in the world of voiceovers and podcasting and audio stuff, and getting that passion across to people who may not be as into it as we are is part of this too. But I think that a lot of what I'm seeing is that finally, maybe a lot of our clients are realizing how important that audio is. So that's why you have a lot of people coming to you for more advice on how to be a better speaker and storyteller, and how to get a corporate, some kind of corporate report to sound like it's important and someone should be passionate about it, as opposed to just saying out the numbers, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't bother. Right.
It just reminded me. Some years ago, I was a company, Nuveda Learning, brought me to India to create some communication modules for them, and I created 4 on-camera voiceover, modules to train people. And then they said, okay, let's go to Bangalore. And now you're going to do a live seminar for a full day with all the CEOs of India. I was like, oh, good to know that. I'm getting on a plane now. Great. Okay. So so I just talked to everyone, told them what to put it. But I know my stuff. So I talked to the team, and they put together the PowerPoint while I got on the plane and went the next to my place. And then I started, on the plane and the hotel room, sort of put down the structure of how the whole day would go. And it was fabulous. Turned out great. But it was such an interesting experience, because I had people from South India and North India and the accents were there. And I was like, I'm having trouble understanding. And one of them came over to me and said, will you slow down? You have an accent. And it occurred to me that I'm the one.
You're
with
the
one
accent. Out of place.
Yes.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, I hadn't thought about it from their perspective, because I had other stuff going on. And some of them, you're not going to, the CEO of a huge corporation, you're not going to go, I really don't understand you. The accent was so intense. So, but that was kind of a fun experience. And then also just being written up in, I guess, like 10 of the newspapers in India as the communication guru of India. I was like, wow, I didn't know I was a guru.
Kind of like that.
But there you have it. They have it in print there.
Yeah, I love it. So what do you think about the rise of podcasts? Like, we've been hearing a lot more of that lately, and I'm wondering why you think that is. Because we're past the pandemic. Well, the pandemic is still a thing, obviously, but we're at least past the deep dark times, let's say. Right. So people are starting to go out again, and they're commuting to work again, and all of this is happening. And there was definitely a resurgence of certain audio places like Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces and all of this social audio happening while we were all stuck at home. But I'm wondering if there's something that you could think would be the reason for it continuing. Because, podcasts have been around for a long, long time. But is there a particular reason you think it's really popular now?
Well, I think that it's becoming part of people's everyday the people in whatever sort of business, or if they just have their home business, of getting their voice out in the world, of telling their story, whatever that story is. And it may be just for their family members. It may be for just a recounting of history so people can have some sort of record of what's going on. There are ways of working, telling people in their client base and their business things that they can do to improve what they're doing. So there's always going to be the amateur, I'm having fun, let's go ahead and try that, because you can. It's relatively easy to say something, record it, put it up. And as you know, the more advanced
low barrier
it gets,
of entry.
Yeah, and then the more advanced it becomes, the more of a team that you need, and the more you have to figure out, where am I going with this? So I think that you can it's a wide swath of where someone can be and how they want to use it. But I think with the post-pandemic time, well, I don't know whether I can say post, but say it's not in the throes of the main part, that people have less time. And so that's the main thing. It's just like, I feel really glad that I put mine together when the pandemic was going over, but as people were starting to come alive out of it, it became a little bit harder to do the last, like maybe 8 episodes, because all of a sudden people woke up and just like, I have demands on you. And it was like, whoa, I can't be just my world. So I feel fortunate that I got mine in there, but I still have plans to do more, but I just have to, there's always new technology, other stuff, and ways that you can reformat what you've already done as well. As you
very
well
true.
know. So.
Yeah. There's a lot going on there. Also, audio has this way of being able to fit into the spaces in our lives. Mm-hmm. So we can listen to it while we're doing other things, which I think has a lot to do with why podcasts and even radio shows maybe are still pretty popular, because people can fit them in wherever they need to fit in. And it's harder to do that if you have to watch a screen. So I get it.
The other means you have a commitment.
Yes.
So the more people who go to my website to get it are getting the full experience. Ones that just go to YouTube are getting another experience. Ones that get audio are getting that third experience. So if people say, this is the time that I use for my commute, this is when I'm in my car, this is when I'm cleaning the house or whatever it is. And there are other times you have to just listen to it, and it's just like, I'm saving this one because I need it to really pay attention. And that's the goal of whoever is creating it, how you want them to take in that information. Because if it's super difficult, then, or if the concept is hard and you have to really take it in, you want to just sort of reserve a time. Like if you know that you're not going to be in a lot of traffic, but you can just take it in, that's fine. But that's why I started asking people, even with mine, is like, how many of you are doing it? Doing the exercises at the end of it, and very few are, because they're in these commuter modes and they are walking down the street and people are just like, they're going to think I'm crazy. So, and I said, well, what's wrong with that? That means people leave you alone.
No one's going to bother you. That's true.
Yeah, they walk to the other side of the street. It could be really beneficial. You get more space, more real estate on the sidewalk.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I could sort of see where they're coming from, though. Not being in a place where you can actually do those exercises when you're listening might be an issue.
Right. And then you just hold it up in your brain, and then it hasn't become part of your muscle memory yet.
Yes,
and that's really when
exactly.
things become your muscle memory. That's when it takes over. And so that's where you just don't know. You haven't pre-planned it. It just happens. And that's what makes an authority. And so that's why if I'm working with someone, I don't have to work with them their whole life necessarily, although some people I do, and it's lovely. But mostly it's like, you already know that, but now let's go deeper into that topic. Let's go find out how you can then glean a little bit more, and then, just push your comfort zone just a little bit.
Yeah. There's one question that I have wanted to ask you for a while, actually, on behalf of some other people who've asked this question of me many times. And that is, if you don't like the sound of your voice, either in a podcast, as a guest on a podcast, doing things that are audio related, is there something you can do to improve that tone? Is there something that you I've had some people say that when they hear their voice recorded, they sound female when they're a male, or they sound male when they're female, or, they just don't like the way that they word things, or just they're not comfortable with hearing their own voice. So, I mean, a lot of that is just hearing it recorded multiple times. But is there a way that you would suggest that they go about improving things, or
Well, I think it's a
changing their own mindset?
Right. I think it's a natural process when you hear your voice externally. When you're used to hearing it rattling around in your head and then you hear it played back, you go, oh my goodness, is that me? Is that how I really sound? Some of it is the microphone. So if you're recording, find out the right microphone that's going to, if you have a really low voice, that would maybe crisp it up and get it a little bit higher. If it's a high voice one, that would warm it up and drop it down, so it brings out the lower tones. So I think when anyone's looking for a microphone to buy for a podcast, that they it's like reading the notes for what a wine is like. It has a hint of this with a little sprinkle of that and a little earthy quality, but then it's very plum with that. So it's like you have to sort of read through the lines of what that all means, but the microphone can make a big difference. Of course, the room, treatment can make a huge difference. But this is where, when I created the app, Activate Your Voice, which is only a 5-minute voice and diction warm-up exercise, the intention for that, everything I do is based on people having problems and how can I fix it in an affordable and effective way. And so this is one that goes through your resonators, your articulators, so that your mouth is open more, and also how you'll get more resonance, and then how it will lower the voice. But there's some vocal exercises, but you can't expect a miracle. Do it one time and then be done. You have to think of it like going to the gym. If I went to the gym and lifted some weights for a while, that will last me the rest of my life, if only. You have to just do those little warm-ups every day. Yes. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then the other app, adding melody to your voice, shows how to lift it up and drop it down. So you have all these different, like 12 or 15 different ways that you can change the melody of how you're talking. So what happens is sometimes they've just arrowed it up and then it stays in that little range right here that's in the higher part. And I never arrowed it down so I brought it back down to my resting voice. And usually when people are in a nervous situation, their voices tend to get higher. And they tend to get a little bit sharper. So then it's about, how can I bring it down to the comfort zone? And is that the place I want it? Because it could be, it's like, I want to get your attention and this is how it's going to be. I will tell you something. So that's how they used to have to talk, for those old microphones, the way they were made. They had to shout in order to go that way. And now these microphones are so sensitive and so they've improved so much that you can get a really nice mic that brings out the best qualities in you. So that's just, there. Some of it are technical and some of it is just you have to work on it every day. And that's why my voice was really high, with the Southern accent as I went through my British time, and then I brought it down. It will never be super low. It's just not how it's built. But it will be, I can use the lower tones and lift them up more if that's what I want, versus the higher tones and drop them down. So that's why through patterns and how I listen to someone, I realize whether they're stuck in a place and different ways that they can change it. And that makes a huge difference, because it's usually their vocal range is fine, but they just got stuck on the wrong notes.
Ah, good point. Yes. Yeah. So where can someone find those apps that you were talking about?
They can find it at any of the app stores, either Google Play or iTunes apps, the Apple App Store. So,
and is it on your website?
It's also on my website, ElaineClarkVO.com. It has everything there, but you can get it at all the different normal places. Same with the podcast. It's like normal places to go. That's what you do when you put together a podcast as well.
Very true. Yes. Yeah.
And then
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. Well, that's it. And how you can comment or do something. I love hearing what people will say. I had on the YouTube channel that I have the podcast on, I was telling people how to use the word emphasis chart, and one of them is like, do a little jazz hands, and the other person wrote, nope. Not going to do it, but then not knowing that we actually wiggle and do stuff all the time. So that's when we nod our head. We shrug our shoulders. We go, oh, I got an idea. Maybe we wiggle our hands for a moment as we're coming up with an idea to gesture to someone to be quiet, or I got something. So it's about, what I do is just try to make people aware of what they are already doing, and then use it to the most effective outcome.
I see. So that's your word emphasis chart, or is that something?
Well, word emphasis chart is in both of the books, and the adding melody to your voice is an interactive app, so that you look, it has information there, and then you can record yourself using each of those. Each just a little sentence that's pretty simple, and then do the gestures, and then you can listen to me back and see whether you got it. And I record it, and then you can keep recording it so that you have home study, but you have the playback and you're developing your ears. So that's it. So if you don't like the sound of your voice, slowing it down. That's what I have to always work on, is slowing down, because I have a tendency to talk too fast. So I have to then consciously think to slow it down, because other people might not want it quite that quickly. They might want to take notes or something,
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's why I go through all of them, but it's, you play it, you see it, you listen to it, you record yourself, you listen back, and then you can do it as many times as you want. But it saves you hundreds or thousands of dollars. So it's not that expensive. So so I think the more people use that sort of stuff, the more effective they are.
Yeah, very much so. So we're coming to the end of our time here, but I wanted to ask you sort of one last thing. If you wanted to talk about why you feel good communication is important, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'll start with the problem, because that's usually where it starts.
Sure.
The problem is when people ask you to repeat yourself, or you don't feel like you're heard. That's when there's a communication problem. When you then offer a suggestion rather than a demand. So we should try that. Why don't you try this other thing? Rather than, you should do this now. We have a tendency to tighten up and not respond well. So that also takes a lot of pressure off of the communication. So in the course of 40 plus years that I've coached people, and thousands and thousands of them, most of them have said that when they became a better communicator for their business purposes, they had better communication with their friends and family. And they had the confidence to pursue the career that they wanted. It's, they might have thought of, I need to open my own store with making candles or whatever it is. And then said, now I have a voice behind that. And so I feel confident with that voice. That's a representation of us. And in society, the visuals mean so much. But over the phone or in podcasts, the voice has become just as important, if not more, because we know when a voice irritates us, or when a voice, you could just dive inside it and go, this is a warm blanket. I could listen to this forever. And that's why, just working with, other companies that have, podcasts that put you to sleep, getting that voice that's soothing and quiet so that you don't even make it to the end of the podcast. So that's
it's
a goal.
ASMR.
It's a way to get them to sleep rather than keep them stimulated and awake. So it's actually a compliment in a weird way that they went to sleep and didn't listen to the whole thing. So as you walk down the path and hear the water trickling down the brook, and then snow. They're like, when is this story going to take off? That's the point, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that styles is a big issue, because knowing what style and how to talk to someone is really part of the effectiveness. And what worked in one situation may not work in another. And so that's just where life experiences come to play, and know that this is how I should talk in this situation. I have to make a slight adjustment to another way based on this. And then when you don't have the visuals of seeing when someone has gone to sleep, then like to wake them up going, hello, everyone. Well, what happened? And that's where I think all the experience of working at trade shows and on camera and voiceover and coaching, it just sort of gives me an advertising. It's just video games. It's given me like a 360-degree vantage point that is that I appreciate. It didn't happen overnight. Let me tell you, it took many decades to develop. So that's where someone can if they have their goals, they can make shortcuts in order to get there to meet those goals based on what their issue is and where they want to be at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Communication is key.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I'm pretty proud. Maybe my kids, if they're listening to this, will disagree. But when I have 3 daughters, they're all adults now, but when they were younger, I have very few memories of us being angry and yelling at one another. Instead, I would just say, they'd say, I need to go to this party, and 3 parties this weekend. I go, well, if you can tell me how you can get there, I'll take you to those. And then they make them think, and they go, I can go to 2, but I can't go to 3. You choose. Rather than going, no, you can't do that. There's no way that you can do that, and then putting a demand on.
Sure.
Letting people come up with their idea and is the most effective way that you can communicate. So it's their idea, not just yours.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a 2-part, it's a conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, conversations is what we're all about here. So
yeah,
I appreciate your being here a lot, Elaine. This has been a really wonderful conversation. And thank you so much for what you're doing for voiceovers and for podcasting and communication in general, because it's all very much appreciated. I know there are a lot of people who benefit from your expertise and your help. So thank you very much for being here and for doing that.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been a wonderful journey, and I can't wait for it to continue and find out more stuff. There's always more to learn and more experiences.
Very true.
And then there's that darn technology that keeps changing too.
We'll keep learning. That's what it's all about.
We will. We'll speak about that at some point.
I'm sure we will. Yes. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jodi. It's been a pleasure.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.